Good morning to everybody. Now we are going to start with the third and final theoretical lesson over the BTS Smart Analyzer application, where we will finalize our analysis protocol into a complete report. Before starting, just a quick summary about what we have learned during the previous two lessons. You have learned about how to create a new protocol starting from scratch, how to load a file into the Smart Analyzer, how to start creating a new protocol panel, and you should now be more familiar with the Smart Analyzer layout and its toolbar, containing all the available operators. We talk about some of them, in particular the one devoted to the 3D marker trajectory interpolation. We talk about some mathematical operators to create virtual points starting from 3D marker trajectories. We learned about how to compute a 1D angle between three markers, how to define manual events and cycle movement, and how to identify local maximum or minimum over a trajectory or an angle. The lesson 2 was instead focused on the 3D kinematics. You learned about how to create a 3D reference system local to a body segment, how to create 3D vectors and axes, and how to compute a 3D Euler angles between two body segments. You learned also about how to normalize a variable respect to the time domain, how to apply the same algorithm to more than one trials, and how to average the results. So, now the focus of the session of today is about how to create a report into the Smart Analyzer application. What is a report? It is usually a document which contains the subject information as first, for example, and that contains basically all the parameter and the variable required to perform the analysis of the results. So this is the Smart Analyzer application. On the 3D workspace, we have the marker set that we have used as example to create a simple kinematic protocol on the upper limb. On the protocol panel on the screen, we have all the variables computed during the last two sessions. And in the data panel on the left contains the TDF file containing all the tracked trajectories and all the variables that we have computed with the protocol blocks that we have applied to the trials. The global data folder contains the computed average variables in the case we will apply more than one trial to the protocol. Well, let's now go starting to learn about how to create a new report. To start creating a new report, we need to open the report panel. The report panel is the workspace into which to build a presentation report. The report panel is below the protocol panel. To open it, we have to click on the little button on the upper right corner to hide it and show the other panel. The toolbar on the left contains the page editing tools used to create or delete pages, to change their order, for example, or to edit their headers. The toolbar on the right contains the graphical object used to display the data, basically plots, tables, text boxes, legend boxes, cyclogram, images, and video. The first step to create a new report is to create a blank page. To create a blank page, we have to click on this button, New Blank Page. Okay, so that's it. Usually the first page of a report contains an header with a title or a logo, for example, and then the subject information, and so on. So let me start by adding a logo, for example. To do this, we need to create an image box. So we can click on this design image box. We can draw a rectangle on the report page. Okay, and now I can load a picture, for example, the logo of the lab. Okay, and we can drag into the box the images, and that's it. Okay, so now I want, for example, to add some text. So, for example, I want to have a text box containing the title of our report, for example. So I can click on design text box. I can draw a rectangle. Okay, I can adjust its position. If I double click on it and I double click on the white box at the top here, I can change, for example, the font, the color, okay, and I can choose for a title, for example, BTS Smart Analyzer Report. Okay, now imagine that I want to add a table containing, for example, all the subject information. To insert a table, you have to click on this button and draw the rectangle on the page. When you insert a table, as you see, a yellow label shows you the number of rows and columns on the table. Now I want to draw a table with 4 rows and 2 columns. Okay, now I can adjust the dimension and the position. If I want, I can add a title. If I want to do it, I can double click on the table box, and this editing table window will appear. From here, if I double click on the title, I can edit the title. For example, I can choose subject information. Okay, and in this in this column, I can add information about the name, the surname, for example, the date of birth, and I can also add all the information required. Imagine that if you use the Smart Clinic or the Smart Performance database, these fields can be automatically applied to a table like this. Okay, so you don't need to fill in every time. Then I want to add, for example, a box containing, for example, note and observation. Notes and observation. And here, for example, blah, blah, blah. When I will save the report, only the title will be preserved, okay? Because we imagine that the second part will be changed every time by the user. That this is the part that will contain the observation and the notes that we want that to change every time. So let's now start creating a second page. Imagine that, for example, this second page will contain, for example, the 1D kinematic result. So let me start by creating a title. Okay, from here we can again I edit the title for example 1D kinematics analysis. Okay, now we can add our first graphs to this page. To creating graph, we have 2 options available. The first is for designing a plot, and the second is for designing a cyclogram. Let's start with the plot. So I can click on here, and I need to draw a rectangle. Okay. To add a graph in the data panel, we have to choose for the variable that we want to show. For example, I want to choose a 3D trajectory that is below this menu. Okay, so for example, let me add the lateral wrist, so I can choose for a component, for example, the vertical component. As you can see, to add the graph, we have just to drag and drop the desired variable into the box. Okay, so that is the graph. So this is, in this case, we have a plot of the vertical component of the lateral wrist marker in time. Okay, so what is instead a cyclogram? Let me just show you. Okay, so I can create a second box. Okay, imagine that I want to plot the same variable, but now I will choose plot y versus x. This is the trajectory into a plane. Okay, so as you can see, you have on the x-axis the x component of the marker, and on the y-axis the y component of the marker. So the plane yx is the sagittal plane for example, and so this is the meaning of this type of visualization that we can use into our report. Okay, now I can also add another plot containing, for example, the 1D angle that we have computed the previous time. So the angle will be contained into the 1D angle tracks. 1D angle tracks, okay. Okay, so this is the results. For example, again, we have the angle in versus time. So this is the angle in the time domain. Now I want also to have add the graph about the mean cycle normalized into the cycle time domain. So again, I can add another box for the new graph. This angle should be within the folder 1D angle cycles. Okay, and here I have the mean and the standard deviation. So remember, this was the angle in time, and this was the mean angle between the two defined cycles related to the movement. Okay, so imagine that now we want to also add a legend box. We can choose this option. We can draw for a rectangle, and to have the legend, we have just to drag and drop from the name of the trial. Okay, so now let's go starting creating a new blank page. Imagine that the third page will contain the 3D kinematic results. So we can again add for a new title. Again, we can edit the font and the color and so on. This will be the 3D kinematics analysis. Okay. Now I want to add 3 plot boxes containing now the 3D elbow angles. So I can choose again, draw a plot box. I can copy this 3 times and adjust the position into the desired position into the page. Okay, so the 3D elbow angles is now below the 3D angles tracks. 3D angles tracks. Okay, here, and I can drag and drop each component into the different boxes. So X, the Y, and the Z. Okay, and now I want again add another box that will contain the mean normalized gait cycle. So these variables is contained into the 3D angle cycles. 3D angle cycles. Okay, and imagine that I want just to use the first flexion extension components. and I can add the average, the mean value, and the standard deviation. Okay. Now I want to add also a table that will contain some parameter that we have computed during the previous webinar session. If you remember, we have computed some parameter relating to the maximum value for the maximum extension, the minimum, and the range of motion. And we have also computed the time, so the duration of an entire cycle. So I want to add all this information into this box, so I can again type edit name for this table, for example, kinematics and temporal parameter. Okay. The maximum value should be below 1D angle, and let me adjust this window. And so here we have the maximum, here we have the minimum, and here we have the range of motion. Okay, so as you can see, to add a variable into a table, you have just to drag and drop the value, the variable, into the second row of the table. Now I want also to add the cycle time. Okay, and that's it. And also in this case, imagine that we want to have a legend, for example, below the pages. Okay, so now we have created 3 pages. Okay, and now I want to add the last page that you can imagine that it will contain the average information. So imagine the case that we will load more than one trial to our protocol, and I want to add here all the average value that we have computed. So again, I want to add a title. Okay, so for example, it will be average 3D kinematics. I want to add 3 different plots that will contain the 3 average components for the 3D angles. If you remember, the average value are within the global data folder. Okay, so I can select 3D angle cycles, and here I have, for example, the X. This is the mean, and this is the standard deviation. Okay, this is a second box will contain the Y component and also the standard deviation. And I will add also the third, so again the mean and the standard deviation. Imagine now that we want to edit this plot, these graphs. So if I double click on this window, the editing plot window will appear. From here we can apply or remove a title. We can type for a new title, for example, elbow flexion extension. Okay, apply. From here, for example, we can add a grill if you want to the graph. We can also change for having on the Y not an auto scale but a manual scale range, because normally it is important to see all the variables in the same scale range. So for example, I want to choose, I want to visualize my graph from 0 to minus 180. So 100. Okay, I can type the name, otherwise I can also use this arrow. Okay. And sorry, I want also to show you how to change the color, for example, of a graph. So you can see from here we can change the color, we can change also the line width, and so on. Okay, if I want, I can do the same also for the other. Okay, so again, I can change the color. I can change the scaling, and so on, and I can also add, also in this case, a grid. Okay, and I can, so you can, under that editing window, you have the possibility to change the layout of your graph. Okay, so now I can also modify this. I can choose this color. Again, I can adjust okay. Okay, so now I want also to add a table that will contain the parameter, the average parameter that we have computed about the maximum value and the time duration of the flex extension cycle. So these variables are below the global data. So below time, I have the cycle, the average cycle time computed, and below 1D angle, I have, for example, the value of the range of motion. Okay, so that is. Now, if we want, we can also change the order of the page. So imagine that, for example, we want to move this fourth page in the second position. So to do this, we have two bottom available here. So if I click, for example, on this bottom, I will move the page up. Okay, so now, okay, so in this case, this would be now the first page, this is the second, this is the third, and this is the fourth. And another option that I want to show you is, okay, now we have created this page based on the test02 data. Okay, so related to the data that are within these files. Imagine that we want to apply the same page layout also to more than one trial. So how to do? We can choose this option, edit page, and we can click on this link to multiple trial session. Okay. Okay, and we can do the same also for the second page, the third page. So again, link to multiple trial session. So now, if I save the protocol, so I select save protocol, I can choose a name. Okay, now as we have add a logo, I have to save the logo also into the sequence of the protocol. So imagine that we want to close the protocol, and I want also to close all the trial. Imagine now that we want to load more than one trial. So for example, the 2 trials that we have to load also the logo. Okay, and now I can load again the quick report that we have just created, that is this one. Okay, so now I can apply all the protocol to both the trial that we have loaded. So this is the logo. Okay, now I have to define the events, as you remember. Okay, these are all the maximum and the minimum that are necessary, that has to be computed to define the cycle events. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now our global data folder contains the average value. If I click on the report panel, this is our new report that now is applied to both the trial. These are the average value between the 2 trials. This is the page devoted to the trial, the first trial, so to the test02 TDF file. Here we have the same layout applied that has been automatically applied also to the second trial. This is the 3D kinematics for the first TDF, the second, and that's it. So now I have just shown you this simple example about how to create a new protocol with the Smart Analyzer. I hope that you have seen that it is very easy to create a new report. You have just to spend some time to add to creating new pages and to choose for the desired layout. But after that, you can just save the protocol and you can reuse it every time you want in a very quick and easy way. I think it is clear we can stop. So I would like to thank everybody for your kind attention and see you on the next webinar session. Bye bye.